Hello, everybody. So it could not be more clear. Don't just hodl. That is the tweet from Michael Saylor. Some weeks you don't just hodl. So this time he bought. Also, we have it confirmed that every quarter, probably when they close the books, he can't buy. That's going to be a pattern, and he's going to buy every other week. So probably 48 out of 52 weeks, Saylor's gonna buy, or at least that is my expectation going forward. The quote I wanted to talk about yesterday, the halls, or 2 days ago, the halls of eternity echo with the cries of those who sold their Bitcoin. That's what he was tweeting on Friday or Thursday as the price of Bitcoin was moving up. I think that's quite important, quite interesting when you think about, say, for example, the country of Germany, how they sold it like way lower. They sold a bunch of Bitcoin. Also, he tweeted this, and you saw this, and you saw my chart in my prior videos. I always show you the chart about how he's going to drain the bond market. This is him talking about it a little differently, talking about how institutional capital, they have money for commodities, but it's not a lot. It's only 3 trillion that they allocate to commodities. They have money for equity. That's the 35 trillion. That's the MSTR ATM. But they have just about twice as much money for credit as they do for equity. So in total, we're looking at 95 trillion. Versus 3 trillion for commodities, 3 trillions of cash for commodities versus 95 trillion total between the equity and the credit. That's why MSTR works. That's why MSTR outperforms, because he's able to tap into a much bigger market and connect it to the commodities market. And he's able to do this over the long run with torque. We saw the insane benefit of torque this quarter where he announced 14 billion in unrealized gains from the gap accounting characterization. 14 billion. That's an example of the torque in progress. And eventually, many believe, many hope, and it's my hope too, but it's my eventual hope, right? I like the ATM right now. I think the ATM and MSTR works just fine right now. But eventually, the hope is that he can do maybe $1 billion a week between STRK, and STRD. What if he issues $1 billion a week of these instruments into the 60 trillion credit market that is identified? Think about the money that will flow into Bitcoin via MicroStrategy. MicroStrategy is responsible in a good way, is to be celebrated in a good way for Bitcoin breaking 119,000 right now. And my guess is, depending on where it opens on Monday, he will look again like a wise buyer, because if he bought last week, he probably bought at 110, 111, maybe 112. I don't know if he bought it on Friday or not, but he's going to look like a genius again, because we could be 10 grand higher on Monday. And if we're not, by the way, that doesn't matter. Remember, Monday mornings, typically markets tank. It doesn't matter. It's a long-term investment. Like this, and I'll quote Saylor again. If you don't want to hold it for 10 years, you shouldn't hold it, like a minute. Saylor says that, but it's a big Warren Buffett quote as well. Saylor also says 4 years, right? Nobody has ever lost money holding Bitcoin more than 4 years, which is the length of a Bitcoin cycle. It's a long-term investment, and I'm making this point towards what I'm going to say in the future, because I got a lot of comments telling me Bitcoin did not outperform. So I'm going to show you conclusive proof that MSTR outperformed Bitcoin. Conclusive proof. Wait a second. So DDATM, as you know, I'm hoping he did all 4. I hope going forward he's going to do all 4. Now he's got the STRD ATM going, 4.2 billion. So I'm hoping he did all 4. Yes, that includes the MSTR ATM. The MSTR ATM is accretive. My video that I share in the description of every single one of these strategy videos walks you through the math. So, of course, the price to MNAV right now is not 1.96. It's 1.8, probably 1.7 now with that Bitcoin going up. Doesn't matter. Do it with 1.7 here. Do the math, and you'll understand how this works. You'll understand how this works. When I made this video a few months ago, by the way, they only had 138,000 Bitcoin, right? And today they have nearly 600,000, right? And they had 538. So you see that bag grew well over 10% in next to no time. He's at 19+% year to date of BTC yield. So yes, the ATM on MSTR common shares are accretive. MSTR common shares are one of the first products that MicroStrategy sells. This is the product. And the rest of the product, MicroStrategy is a financial company. They work a little bit like the bank. They are like a bank. They are a financial treasury company. They issue financial instruments. The financial instruments that they are starting to issue, that's going to generate a lot of torque for them, is STRK, STRF, and STRD. And STRK and STRF is accretive right now. That's what generates the most BTC torque, and they all, whether you're talking about STRD, about which one is that? Is that okay? It didn't say about STRK and STRF. Okay, whether you're talking about STRD, STRK, or STRF, they are all going to generate BTC torque, but STRD is almost on its way to being like that, right? STRD is almost there. STRD, we're not there yet. We're not issuing STRD right now at a price to par, but my guess is as the credit re-rates, we might see a STRD trading at 105, and when STRD trades at 105, then you're gonna have a price to par, and the value over par, or P over par, I don't know how the community is gonna call this, but the value over par is collected. So when they issue, for example, a strike convertible, not convertible, preferred. I don't think they're going to do the convertible again. I said that before on the channel. When you issue a strike preferred share, and when you issue it for 122, but the par value is 100, what happens to the 22? Well, you have a price to par of 1.22. You collect the 22. This is why this is so magical, because if rates drop, what if the preferreds start trading at like 160 or 170? So that means your price to par is going to be 1.7. So you're going to collect the 7 over the 1. So this is going to be pretty genius. And by the way, another way to look, of course, at the preferred is that you're borrowing for permanent capital. You're creating permanent debt in exchange for permanent capital. And you're not paying for that debt through dilution. You're paying from that debt with a permanent fiat yield. So the bet that Michael Saylor is making, of course, is that Bitcoin will always return more than, say, 8% in the case of STRK and 10% in the case of STRD and STRF. That's the bet that Saylor is making. Saylor thinks he's being conservative, making that bet over the long run, because he estimates that Bitcoin is going to go up by 30%. By 30%. And even if that doesn't happen, as we saw, he has no problem doing financial engineering to pay the instruments, right? And so issuing common shares, common stock to pay the STRD or STRF instrument, he has no problem doing that. And keep in mind that there's a whole array of solutions that he can use to pay the preferreds, to pay those debts. Whole sorts of solution, right? Apple did that for the longest time, right? Apple was financing buybacks with borrowed money in Europe for cheap. Like, companies play with balance sheet all the time. This is not shocking. Did MicroStrategy outperform Bitcoin? Now that's going to be the conclusion of the video. That's going to be the big question. Because in the comment section, I get a lot of loud people. No, stop saying he outperformed. You're gaslighting us. He outperformed. Really? He didn't outperform. Bitcoin is doing better than MicroStrategy. Like, I'm not gaslighting anybody. What is this? MicroStrategy outperformed Bitcoin. People are just too close. You're zooming too close. Like, too close. First of all, before I even go there, there's only one day where MicroStrategy traded more than where it is today, and it is on November 20th, 2024. So yeah, if you went all in on that day, I understand you probably have another week or 2 weeks of disappointment. Probably. Maybe less than that. I don't know. But the point is, anybody who enters this asset through a DCA over the long run should be well up and should have well outperformed Bitcoin. And remember, I was talking about MicroStrategy nearly 3 years ago. I'm not the only one. Plenty of people on YouTube were talking about MicroStrategy back then, now called strategy, right? I know that, but I've known strategy as MicroStrategy for longer than I've known it as strategy. So, anyways, MicroStrategy back then, 2020. This is the famous day, right? August 11, 2020. I went back to the press release. That's when he started. Okay, 21,000 Bitcoin bought for 250 million. Think about that dream price. That's like $11,000 a coin. Think about that dream price. We're talking about breaking probably 120 sometime soon. We're at 119, and he bought 21,000 at 11,000 a coin. That's how genius that is. Well, did he outperform Bitcoin since adopting the strategy? Well, let's look. Right, 3,100% total return for MicroStrategy versus 720% for Grayscale Bitcoin Trust. Of course, I use that because the ETFs didn't exist back then. That was the only exposure. So you're talking about enormous outperformance, and in ARR, right, average rate of return, what kind of difference do you get? 102% versus 53%. That's a nice double. So yes, over this period, it outperformed Bitcoin. Now let's look a year and a half. And again, I could have nitpicked. I could have chosen periods where they outperformed a little more or even a lot more. If I go 2 years and a half or something. But let's look at this one. Year and a half, 710% versus 152%. For Bitcoin. Bitcoin, 152%. MicroStrategy, 710%. 1.5 years. That's the outperformance. So nearly a 3x, more than a 3x in an average annual total return. So how amazing is that? Pretty crazy. Let's look at 1 year. Let's do 1 year. We do 1 year now. Okay, 1 year, 211% annual gains versus 104% for IBIT. So again, a clean double over a 1 year period. And now let's do half a year. Let's do since January, right? The beginning. Bring this to front. Beginning of January 2025, right? January 2nd, 2025 to July 11. So the trading on Friday. What do we have? IBIT on Friday year to date closed plus 21%. MSTR year to date on Friday evening closed plus 44%. So total return was 44% for MSTR, 21% for IBIT. Annualized, that's 41 versus 86. We're still at a double over half a year. And so to finish this, like, yeah, of course, if you're gonna nitpick and you're gonna look at the chart and you're going to pick the period that's like not advantageous from MSTR, like let's say you're gonna pick November 20th, and then you're gonna overlay IBIT over that. Yeah, I guess over a 8-month period, using these hand-picked dates, for those hand-picked dates, it didn't outperform. But if you DCA, if you bought it in chunks over multiple months, hopefully more than a year at this point, because we've been pounding the table on this stock for a very long time. If you do that, you should have outperformed Bitcoin. If you do that, you should have. But it requires a lot of conviction. Right? Because you gotta have conviction in Bitcoin. You gotta understand fiat. You have to understand financial markets. You have to go against the grain and understand ATMs and why ATM is good. You have to do actual math and actually go through the calculation and do that calculation yourself on the ATM. This is not a stock that is easy to understand. This is not your typical hyper growth stock with a P ratio and all of that. And anyways, hopefully that settles a few things out and a few comments that I got. But that's just my take on this. So did MicroStrategy outperform Bitcoin? It's a big yes. Unless you're nitpicking and looking at a period that fits your narrative, then it's not true. It's a big yes. That's the point. So anyways, this was not financial advice, not investment advice. This is entertainment and entertainment only on this channel. Please like, please subscribe, follow me on Patreon, follow me on X. Thank you for watching and have a wonderful, wonderful day.